Hey everyone, Naima here. Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk all about ovulation tracking and what are the most effective and easy ways to track your ovulation. Why do we want to be tracking ovulation? Well, some people like to track it to avoid pregnancy or to get pregnant or as a sign of your health. Ovulation is really the main event of the menstrual cycle. It's what the menstrual cycle is all about. Ovulation, potential procreation of the species. And if you aren't in the best health or something's off in your health, that's going to show up in your menstrual cycle, potentially in the form of not ovulating. All of the subsequent hormonal sequences that happen following ovulation are super beneficial and helpful in maintaining our short-term and long-term health. It increases our chances of healthy brain tissue and breast tissue and cardiovascular health, and actually decreases chances of cancer. So we want to be tracking ovulation, and here's how. The best, most simple and effective way for tracking ovulation is by taking your basal body temperature. And your basal body temperature is essentially your body's temperature upon waking each morning. So you get a classic thermometer, and every morning before you get up, before you go to the bathroom, before you have sex, before you drink water, before you do anything, you take your temperature. And you want to make sure that you've rested for at least 5 hours, slept for at least 5 hours. And so you take your temperature by just placing the thermometer under your tongue and then recording that number down on whatever you're using to chart. You do not need a fancy thermometer to do this. My thermometer is a basic thermometer from my local drugstore. You don't need anything fancy. I know there's a lot of fancy thermometers out there on the market today for period tracking, and if you want to try one out, go for it, but you definitely don't need it. So I want you to know that this is really accessible, and it's going to cost you all of $10 or so. So once you get your thermometer and you begin taking your temperature each morning, you want to be tracking that somewhere where you're going to be able to see the temperature shifts across your entire menstrual cycle. And what typically happens in a menstrual cycle is in the first half of your cycle, your follicular phase, your temperatures are slightly lower. And then after you ovulate, your temperature rises and it's higher during the second half of your cycle or your luteal phase. And our bodies are beautifully intelligent, and this happens because if we were going to conceive a child, our bodies need to be a more hospitable environment for a baby to grow, and that requires a higher body temperature. So regardless of conception or not, your body temperature is going to raise after you ovulate. And so that's a really clear sign of ovulation. The thing that's really important to know and to remember about tracking your ovulation through basal body temperature is that your body temperature is going to raise after you've ovulated. So what the BBT, basal body temperature line on your chart is actually going to be showing you is after you've ovulated, not when you're going to or the moment of. And some of you might be wondering right now, well, what's the point of that? And well, there's two main points. One, it's to know that you're ovulating, which as we know is a major sign of good health. And number two, it helps you to know when your infertile window begins and ends so that you can have safe sex and use this method as an effective form of birth control. So when it comes to fertility awareness method and tracking ovulation in that way, essentially what we're trying to do is to close in on the window and have a greater understanding of when our fertile window is. And so the basal body temperature is going to give you an idea of when that fertile window has closed and ended because ovulation has happened. If you're wanting to get a little bit more aware of what's happening on the other side of that window, there are two things that a person can do depending on their needs. One, it's just tracking your cervical fluids and mucuses and watching for those fertile quality cervical fluids. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there's a lot of other great information about learning about your cervical mucus, which is not going to be entailed in this video, but maybe another one. So it's watching your cervical mucuses, and then as well for some people that are really wanting to capitalize on their ovulation for potential pregnancy, you can use LH test strips, which stands for luteinizing hormone test strips. And what these strips do is essentially it tests the luteinizing hormone in your urine. Luteinizing hormone is a hormone in our reproductive system that when it reaches a certain threshold, it's going to trigger the ovulatory event to occur. So women that are trying to get pregnant, sometimes they'll be measuring their luteinizing hormone in their urine. And when it does get to a certain peak threshold that the test strips will tell you about, then you know that you're in this window where ovulation will most likely to occur. And once you reach that threshold, it typically occurs within the next 36 hours. So you can kind of get this very narrow window of time when ovulation might be happening. And then the last way to know the moment of ovulation is just if you're one of those people that feels it inside of your own body. And there's actually a term for that little crampy feeling that you might feel sometimes during ovulation, and it's called Mittelschmerz. It is a German word, and it's literally talking about the moment of ovulation. And sometimes you'll feel a cramp on either the right or left side of your body. So, all in all, we can't really know the exact moment that we're ovulating unless we have that sensation in our body and we've been tracking, then you can have a greater sense. But overall, what we're trying to do is just to narrow in on this window of time when we are in our peak fertility. And one of the best ways to do that is using the thermometer and tracking your basal body temperature. I hope this video informs you a little bit more about how to track your ovulation. I hope that you begin doing so, and if you have any questions or comments, please comment below. Please like or subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video so more people like you can have access to this information, and I'll see you next time.